Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's FPC Radio Live. I'm your host, Ian Glendon, of course, joined by my paisan, Mr. John Sapichetti. And we're back. Happy 4th of July for anyone out there who had a celebratory afternoon out on the grill, maybe setting off fireworks, depending on where you live. Hopefully no one had any sort of gruesome, nasty injuries from that, because that's always frightening. And we see some really stupid things, John, come out of 4th of July holiday here in this country. One of which was I saw someone light off a firework inside their own home for what I assume is social media clicks and views. Mm-hmm. It's pretty moronic. I mean, like I said, survival of the fittest. Sometimes, kind of want to see that kind of take over sometimes.
Yeah, Lord of the Flies, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not a big fireworks person. I know that I've seen them before, so I don't have to see them again. It's the same thing over and over and again.
I went to plenty of WWF events in the late 90s and early 2000s. I've got my fill of fireworks.
There you go. Yeah. And then just the noise. I mean, you're just in your home, you may be watching something, listening to something, and then somebody down the street decides to, set off a bunch of fireworks, and you're like, why are they doing that?
Welcome to the week before and week after 4th of July down in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's same thing here. It's 3-4 days before, 3-4 days afterwards. It's like you got to get rid of this product after you bought it. So, sometimes it lingers on for a few days, but hopefully it's over with. But I know in Florida it probably lasts a little bit longer. But we move on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I went golfing, actually. I played 9.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice. It was a nice day out. I mean, normally it rains here. I mean, this is the time of year that, we get thunderstorms and pretty heavy rainstorms pretty much every day, at least for a period of time. So, 4th of July is no different. Every year that I've been down here that it's actually rained and done all that. So, but yeah, so it's I'm glad it's over. I'm glad it's over. Hopefully the fireworks, like you said, will die down a little bit. What isn't dying down though, John, you like how I'm going to segue, is the fireworks in the NBA, because there are always tons of them. Certainly in the offseason. I mean, you can almost argue that for large periods of the season, or let's put it this way. The NBA offseason is more entertaining than large chunks of the regular and postseason in the NBA. In most cases, because of just, how it's controlled by the players and just how business is conducted. It's always very entertaining.
Because anything's possible, right? I mean, here's Kevin Durant, who signed a 4-year extension a year ago. The extension hasn't even gone into effect, and he's already requesting a trade from the Brooklyn Nets. And then Kyrie Irving, was he going to opt in? Was he not going to opt in? Is he going to end up with the Lakers? And that's just 2 stars. And then there were a flurry of trades and extensions last week. And right now the league's just, on a holding pattern, waiting to see what's going to happen with Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets, and to a lesser degree, Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets. So, yeah, the offseason has always been fascinating because the best players move. And we're starting to see a little bit of that in the NFL, with obviously Tom Brady going from the Patriots to Tampa. That's as big a move as we've ever seen in the NFL. But then last year we saw, Russell Wilson going from Seattle to Denver, Matt Ryan going from Atlanta to Indianapolis. So, you get to see a lot of these moves in the NFL. But the NBA, it's like anything could happen and really would not surprise us.
Yeah, and look, I mean, can you really blame Kevin Durant for wanting out of Brooklyn? Like, I don't really honestly, I don't blame him for this. I do think I think he gets a little bit too much grief, and then look, he brings a lot of it on himself because he decides to dive into the social media world and really, not take a day off when it comes to that. So he certainly brings in a lot of this hate on himself, but I really don't blame him for it. I think he's a fairly humble. Does that make sense? Like, I think he's for as good as he is, and make no bones about it, I mean, he's a great player. I mean, for all this talk, everything about KD, I mean, he's a great player. And I think he's fairly humble relative to certainly some of his teammates and other players in this league. I think he's a pretty humble superstar who just happens to not know when to just disengage on Twitter. And trust me, I I sympathize with that.
Yes, I think you could be aligned with KD for sure. You like to go back and forth on Twitter, as does Kevin Durant with his burner accounts or even his
Well, I don't
account.
have any burner accounts.
I give you credit for that.
I do not have that.
Go right at it. You are right out there front and center, and I give you credit for that. But with Durant, I mean, he recently referred to himself as God, which, that's pretty much a major ego. But before that was the case, he was like the humble superstar. I remember when he re-signed with Oklahoma City, it was done with just a tweet, speaking of Twitter. When he won his MVP, he had his mom there. It was a great speech, and everybody really loved KD. And then when he decided to go to Golden State, going on a team that had just won 73 games the year before, he became the heel. And I don't know if he's ever really been comfortable with that.
Well, that's fine, but to me that doesn't change who he is as a person. Like that's more narrative and fan driven than your reality. Like he went to Golden State. Great. I mean, he was a large reason, and we've said this many times before, we don't think that they win those two titles without him. And I mean, to me, that's not him bailing out or going wherever. And it's like the ironic thing is, the funny thing is, if you want to call it that, and this isn't a opportunity, this isn't me trying to take a shot at LeBron James, but again, what's the difference? I mean, they behind the scenes worked together to get themselves together in Miami to win, because he could not do it in Cleveland with the teams that he had. So, okay, so be it. If you want to criticize. But, to me, I think he's unfortunately picked up a bit of a bad rap. And then again, you align yourself with Kyrie Irving, it's not going to do your stock any good. And, I think a lot of people outside of Brooklyn wanted to see this team fail from the get-go, and that doesn't obviously endear your superstars to outside fan bases. So for all those reasons, obviously Kevin Durant is public enemy number 1 or 2 or 3 for a lot of people, but I don't blame him for wanting out of Brooklyn. Regardless of the extension, you can see just how this is just not looking like it can be salvaged. I mean, at this point, like John, I mean, this isn't a team that's ascending. I mean, what redeeming qualities do they have? Maybe Ben Simmons will learn how to hit mid-range and 3-point shots. Is that it? On top of staying healthy and actually motivated to actually play basketball. Like, what do they have outside of, again, outside of what I just mentioned?
Well, I mean, if they stayed together with Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons, they could have something there, but it just never really meshed. Again, Simmons didn't play last year, so we'd have to see how that all fits together. Some people are thinking that Kevin Durant's making this request as a way to leverage getting Kyrie Irving to get a longer-term deal with Brooklyn, which is not going to happen. He opted in, and I think Brooklyn's going to hold firm on that they're not going to give it to Kyrie Irving, because you don't know with Kyrie Irving. He could retire season. He could join the circus. He could do whatever. Who knows with Kyrie Irving? I think Kevin Durant's pretty much committed to playing basketball. That's what he loves to do. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all for player empowerment and player movement. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Go do what you can. It's all done legally. There's free agency. There's trades that can be requested. I just wonder how this sits with casual basketball fans, though. Do they get kind of turned off by this? I think, because we're involved in this and we talk about it every day and all of that, we find it intriguing. But, does the average person out there go, gee, I'm getting kind of tired of hearing players complaining after they sign a 4-year, $200 million extension, and then they request the trade because they don't like the way something's done on the basketball team. I just wonder how that's going to, hurt the sport going forward, because there's a new CBA that has to be agreed upon in a few years, and then a massive TV deal, when I know the TV executives are like, can we kind of get all together here and build a product rather than having guys miss 35 games a year for whatever reasons? I mean, if you've got a national TV contract and you're promoting a Thursday night game between, I don't know, Brooklyn and the Lakers, and LeBron's not there and Kevin Durant's not there and Kyrie's not there, if you're TNT or ESPN, you're like, what the hell are we paying for?
Mm-hmm.
At least in the NFL, if you're promoting Rodgers, Brady, week 4, that those two guys are going to show up, unless, of course, Rodgers tests positive for COVID.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're going to see those great matchups, right? Players play. That's a concern, especially when the TV networks are going to dole out $75 billion over a 10-year period. That's a lot of money to have, obviously the inventory is great and it's enormous because there's so many games. But I think there's going to be pushback there and go, can we get a refund here because we're not getting the product you told us we're going to get?
Well, I'll answer a few of those observations, or I'll like for those who get upset about player empowerment or player, I say you're upset. Basically, you're more concerned about the billionaire owner than you are the player.
Yes.
Which
right.
I kind of find is a little silly and kind of contradictory for what much of society feels, corporations, at least in this country, how they feel about them and their power and all that stuff. So I kind of chuckle at that, which, to your point, I'm like, all right, let them go out and make their money. I don't care about that. I do understand maybe the exhaustion and seeing just constant play. Like, it's fun and everything like that. But for the most part, we're seeing, there may be this idea that maybe the competition isn't as important in some cases, you know what I mean? And that can rub fans the wrong way to make it feel like, oh, maybe this person's not giving this effort. And I know there's this, idea that people think they're too nice now to each other. Like, again, maybe it's just the untethered access to every game, every practice, everything like this that, opens up the doors to see a lot more of these players. So you see more of them interacting. But I think people get rubbed the wrong way in some situations where, like, you just had like this hard fought game between the Steelers and say the Ravens. And afterwards you have two of their best players taking photos together and sharing jerseys and stuff like that, and it's like, all right, we get it. But like at a certain point, like you maybe if it is just kind of an act, you want them to have this no nonsense. I don't want to have anything to do with this rival type of thing. And I think fans feed into that. So like, I think that's part of the issue where like fans will sit there and say, oh, well, I want them to hate each other more. And look, I get that. I'm not going to sit there and say that, part of me is not like, yeah, I'd rather not see all the, oh, what's up, man, hugging and doing all this stuff. Like, I'm like, okay, that's kind of reserved for your old guys, the guys that have been around the block. Like, I don't want two players in their prime on two rival teams, chumming it up on camera. Like, I want them to hate each other. I want them to all to be James Harrison. Okay. I want them to hate whoever they're playing. Like make me believe that you hate this person or this team or what they represent. And by that, I mean the city or the franchise. This is all within the, I'm not talking about real hate. I'm talking about sports hate. And I think there's a big, big difference. Like, you can hate everything about a fan base within the context of that sport. But outside of that, I mean, it has no bearing whatsoever. Like, I don't like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so when I talk about hate, I'm talking specifically sports hate, like just untethered, unwound, just hate your opponent. And I don't think you get a lot of that. So I think that rubs fans the wrong way. Sometimes they kind of feel like, maybe they're missing that aspect of the rivalry and maybe there's not that hatred there anymore. So,
there's so much money at stake now. And then you have a lot of the players have the same agents and, they played AAU together, so they're friends. And then when they get to the NBA, they want to get together. And I'm fine with all that. That's just the way the world works. I have no problem with that. I'm just talking about that, at some point, I hope, the old expression, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. Don't take too much of a good thing because it may turn some people off.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's how I feel about, let's say, like offensive. I mean, really, it's like you think you're keeping it in an NBA context. NBA All-Star games, I hate them. They're. I mean, these games end 165 to 155, and it's the most boring thing I've ever seen because there's no defense, there's literally no effort, and kind of it's a microcosm of kind of that issue that I was talking about, where it's like everyone's all friendly and just having a good time, and I get it, I understand why. I mean, why play an exhibition game? Why risk what you have for not a game check? I mean, I know players appreciate the honor and all that stuff, but like, why risk it? So. But at the same time, I hate that. I hate NHL All-Star games because it's the same thing. I hate the Pro Bowl, same exact thing. Like, everyone was all up, excited about that Chiefs Rams game from a couple years ago, and I'm just like, eh. I mean, there was exciting moments, but there was no defense. And I'm not talking about I don't need like smash mouth defense. I just need like some resistance. Like I hated playing video games like on super easy because that's what it would. Like why would I have fun just scoring touchdowns every single possession by just doing this? You know what I mean? Like it's just too much of a good thing is sometimes just not quite what you want. So all right, before we end up the show today, I do want to talk about a situation where the Browns, you know the old expression, like if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have a single quarterback. Well, normally that's reserved when you have a collection of mediocre signal callers. And that kind of implies that if you can't make a decision, it means, well, is any of them actually worthy? Well, right now, the Browns, their situation, they have two capable signal callers, neither of which may end up actually playing for them next season. And you know what? I'd be okay with that. And you kind of get what you deserve, Browns franchise. And of course, I don't believe Deshaun Watson should play next season. So to that point, I'm going to ask you, how do you think this plays out? Because like the Browns right now, obviously they don't have, outside of their historic name and their history, which isn't technically even theirs, but whatever. We're not going to get into the complexities of the Cleveland Browns moving to Baltimore, but you're taking their history and then Cleveland Browns returning, but not getting. It's a mess, John. We're not even going to get through that. It's just kind of is a great example of what this franchise is. It's just kind of a quote unquote hot mess. I don't know. Is that still in? Do people still say hot mess now? I don't know. I feel like
sure. Fire.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be taking your word for what's in or hip, so to speak. But then again,
hey, I'm hip.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have a hip. I'll give you
I
that.
do, yes.
Yes.
Actually, they work. Actually, both hips are pretty good. I don't need a
good.
replacement at any time soon, which is good.
No, that's good. No, look, I'm looking at the situation with the Browns, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, this has disaster written all over it, and I'm rooting for disaster. And I that doesn't mean that I take joy out of the collateral damage that comes from this, from other players on that team or whatever that may suffer. But they dug themselves in this hole willingly. They put themselves in this situation willingly. And if they're without either of those quarterbacks next season, I'll be fine with that. And like I said, I think Baker Mayfield should get traded. He should want to be away from that franchise. I said it months ago. He should never want to play for them again. I don't care what they come back crawling to once Deshaun Watson does get suspended. He shouldn't have to play in that organization because it's only going to lead to a failure for him. And I mean, what does he have to gain from that? Nothing, because the future, based on the guaranteed money given to Deshaun Watson, what happens this season, he's going to be their quarterback. So if you're Baker Mayfield, yes, you want to be out. And if you're the Cleveland Browns, you're nervously sitting there waiting and hoping the NFL somehow screws up their investigation and doesn't suspend Deshaun Watson for the entire season. Because look, I don't. That should be the bar, in my opinion. But we know that that's probably not going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting scenario would be an 8-game suspension, because then what does Cleveland do? Do they just sit tight with Jacoby Brissett as their starting quarterback for 8 games, and then Deshaun Watson comes back in midseason? If it's an entire season, then I think the Browns may have to go back to Baker Mayfield, hat in hand, and say, well, we're going to give you some more money. We want you to be our quarterback this year. And if you're Baker Mayfield, I know he's a very petty guy, but it's an opportunity to play, and then it's an opportunity to prove to the league that you can be a starting quarterback. I don't
know if it's would be petty as much as pride, though. Like, why would you bail out a franchise that decided we're going to take the serial assaulter over you? You know what I mean? Like, be very like, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to give him a whole ton of money. Like, I understand. Like, I was not in the. I'm not a huge, on the field Baker Mayfield fan. I think he's a pretty good quarterback. I don't, so necessarily moving on isn't what I'm criticizing. Like, I mean, if there's an opportunity to upgrade that position, obviously as a franchise, you want to take it because the quarterback is the most important position in the league and you can't win without one. But just the way in which they pursued and then obviously acquired Deshaun Watson, and then of course Deshaun Watson himself, because not only are you choosing another quarterback over you're choosing a guy that has, I mean, a CVS receipt length of issues coming into it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm like, if I'm Baker Mayfield, the allure of playing for a franchise that, again, outside of all this, I mean, we still don't know if they're going to function properly. I mean, it's the Cleveland Browns. I mean, this is a team that has not won a playoff game since, well, I mean, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. I mean, they have absolutely zero success to show, certainly since they returned to the league in 2002. 20 years ago. Like there's a long list of failures on their last 20 years. So I'm not even certain that this franchise with either quarterback is going to be successful. So if you're Baker Mayfield, it might hurt your cause to go and play for the Browns next year. I'd rather almost, again, hold out if you have to, but that might be the best route.
Well, we've seen with Mitchell Trubisky, he backed up Josh Allen in Buffalo for 1 year, and the reports were glowing that he really grew as a quarterback, even though it was only in practice, but that he, got some of his mechanical issues repaired by Brian Daboll, who was the offensive coordinator there and is now the head coach of the Giants, and he was able to sign a good, not great contract with Pittsburgh, but now he's back playing. It's like anything else, if you get the opportunity to play, you can prove to people that you should be a starting quarterback in the NFL. That's the only thing I would think of is if Baker Mayfield decides, I really don't want anything to do with the Cleveland Browns, trade me to wherever, Seattle. I mean, that's been the rumor. So, okay, if he goes to Seattle and he's a starting quarterback there, then that's great too, because now he can prove that he plays. So it's just, he needs the opportunity to play, or maybe he just needs a year away from football in terms of just let his body heal up, because he's had a myriad of injuries. He's not a big guy. He's not an athletic guy. Let him kind of heal up and maybe spend the year watching football. It's been done many, many times by quarterbacks, and they've had good second halves of their careers. Jim Plunkett was one of them. Got beat up in New England, got traded to San Francisco, got beat up in San Francisco, got claimed by the Raiders, sat for a couple of years, came back with a really good team and won 2 Super Bowls. That's not going to happen all the time. But my point being, sometimes it's good to just kind of get away from it for a year, heal up, maybe, see things differently, learn a different offense, work on your mechanical issues if there are any, and then you come back and you get a chance to play, because these quarterbacks are playing longer and longer. It's not like you're washed up at 32. Obviously not, with Tom Brady going into age 45 and still an MVP caliber quarterback.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Baker Mayfield.
And again, he's an outlier. He's obviously an outlier.
Well, no, but still, I mean, but Baker Mayfield is still a former first overall pick, and he's relatively young. He's going to get another chance at some point.
Sure.
So to me, it's this isn't like, your career is on the line. You don't take whatever you're given. You're never going to. No, he's going to see a football field again. Some team, whether it's this year, next year, is going to give him an opportunity to start for them. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a success or that he's going to have, a run like Jim Plunkett did after a couple years away. No, but I'm saying that he's going to get an opportunity. So it's not, him having to play next season isn't a necessity. And I think in this situation, sometimes, being too prideful can be hurt, can hurt. But I think this is a situation that most people, I think, would support in Baker Mayfield's stance, because not only are you sticking up for your own pride, but, again, you're sticking up for having to lose your position to a guy like Deshaun Watson, and for the organization to sell out the way they have done to this point. So, so to me, we'll see how that ultimately plays out. And I'll ask you, what's your gut saying right now? Where does Baker Mayfield land, and how long do you think Deshaun Watson's suspension going to be?
I think Watson's going to be suspended for the entire year, and I think Baker Mayfield's going to be a starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I think they're going to just throw some money at him, and then his agent or advisors or whoever is going to say, Baker, go play, light it up this year if you have a really good season. And again, they're a pretty talented team. It's not like you're going into a really poor situation. Then the market for Baker Mayfield will explode next year, because he is young and, by all accounts, he's a a gym rat. Like, he loves playing football. That's not a question. It's not Kyrie Irving, who we don't know if he loves playing basketball. So I think that's what's going to happen. If I'm Baker Mayfield, sure, I'd like to end up in Seattle, compete with Drew Lock for that position and try to build something there. Although I think Cleveland's roster is much better than Seattle, although they're playing in a tougher conference. But, at this point, he just needs to play somewhere this year to kind of rebuild his market.
Yeah, see, I agree that Deshaun Watson will get suspended for the year. I hope. Maybe it's just more of a hope than a, real thought process here. More a little, hopefully not a little in the NFL. I hope they get it right. I hope that a full season suspension is what they're going for. But so that's what I think is going to happen. But I don't believe Baker Mayfield will be the star. I think it will be Jacoby Brissett next season for the Browns, which is fine. I mean, he's shown that he's perfectly capable of holding down the fort. He's a career backup quarterback in this league, Jacoby Brissett. So you're going to have some nice moments with him. You're going to be able to kind of keep things steady, but you're going to be without your starter for the entire season, which tells me, well, this Browns team is probably at best. Well, we can't be 500 anymore in this league. I mean, I don't know what the math is. Maybe if you have a couple ties in there, it works out to be 500.
8-8-1. 8-8-1. That's what you want to be.
Okay, there you go. 8-8-1. There you go. Yeah, so I like that would be the absolute ceiling for this team, in my opinion. More likely that you're talking about maybe 4 or 5 wins, and you regroup next season and whatever. But I think in terms of what's going to happen with Baker Mayfield, I say number 1, he ends up in Seattle. Number 2, he ends up sitting out the year. And then, again, attacking next season and going into it next year when maybe there's going to be some better situations available to him. Because right now it's really Seattle and like Carolina, both of which you're like, Seattle, you can see Russell Wilson had some success, but okay, Tyler Lockett, you have some nice pieces there, DK Metcalf, but nothing really stands out. And same thing with Carolina, you have some nice pieces, but Christian McCaffrey only plays 5 games a year. Robbie Anderson was talking about retiring just a few weeks ago, so how long is he going to be? You know what I mean? So there's not too many great situations. However, they are better than Cleveland, in my opinion, because of just what's transpiring there right now. So maybe we'll get we were supposed to, or we are supposed to get some sort of clarity before training camp starts, and that's going to be in a few weeks. So maybe we'll get that. Maybe we'll figure out what the total game suspension is going to be, and then we can further speculate about what's going to happen, because that's what we like to do. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back Friday. We're going to break down the rest of this week and obviously get ready for what's going to be pretty nonstop NFL talk here in a few weeks once the season really gets going, and then we're pretty much straight on until February, so it's going to be pretty fun. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live, and of course at Full Press Radio for all of our podcast radio shows and of course live video broadcast. Check it out, and we will very much appreciate it. Have a great day, folks, and we will talk to you later.